Allen & Company wishes OOIDA and all members a safe, healthy, and joyous holiday season.
OOIDA, representing America's truckers since 1973, presents Landline Now with your host, Mark Redding.
You may have heard we had an election this week. And while you are likely familiar with the big results, what you may not know is the potential impact of those results on the trucking industry. I'll take a look at some of the key trucking issues and what might happen regarding them after January 20th with OOIDA Director of Federal Affairs, Jay Grimes. In an effort to make reporting suspicious activity around sex trafficking easier, TruckerPath has teamed up with Truckers Against Trafficking. We speak with both sides about the importance of being educated to this increasing problem around the country. And finally, across the country, voters earlier this week made their views known on a series of transportation-related ballot issues. At the same time, voters made their choices for thousands of elected offices across the country, including the governors of 11 states. Scott Thompson covers that and more with our state legislative expert, Keith Goebel. But first, the news with Scott Thompson.
Thanks, Mark. Our top story today. Bendix's vast recall of hundreds of thousands of electronic control units is now affecting tens of thousands of Mack trucks and more than 100,000 international trucks. According to the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration, Mack Trucks is recalling more than 60,000 model year 2020 through 2025 Anthem, Granite, Pinnacle, and TerraPro trucks that are equipped with the Bendix EC80 Advanced ECU. Electrical noise and a low signal to the power line carrier may cause the ECU to incorrectly process commands or stop working altogether. Meanwhile, International Motors is recalling more than 105,000 trucks over the same issue. A number of models and model years are impacted. For a full list, check out our story on landline.media. The National Highway Traffic Safety Administration is launching a study on crash avoidance technologies. The agency wants to know a number of things, in particular how humans interact with the technology and its various alerts and warnings. Many truck drivers have complained about crash avoidance tech on trucks, saying that the systems create too many false alarms. Opponents of automatic emergency braking systems, for instance, contend that the tech creates dangerous situations by mistaking a guardrail along a curve or an overpass as an immediate danger. OOIDA Executive Vice President Louis Pugh told Congress earlier this year that some of the technologies won't necessarily work for heavy-duty trucks the same way they do for cars.
You know, I can't say this enough. I point this out all the time. Trucks are completely different from cars. And just because a technology works well in a car and an automobile does not mean that it's going to work well in a truck. Every load, every type of truck is different as far as weights and how the product moves and stuff like that. You take a tanker, there's liquid in there moving all the things. So the way you have to stop that is completely different from a load of paper towels on a van trailer. So
NHTSA plans to use the research to learn more about the effectiveness of the crash avoidance systems. The agency will lean on about 200 licensed drivers, including some CDL holders, from the Columbus, Ohio area for the research. Drivers in the study must be between 25 and 65 years old. Truckers involved must have a valid CDL and drive at least 11,000 miles a year in a commercial truck. Once all the information is collected, a report will be made public. As cargo theft continues to climb across the United States, one industry insider is telling carriers in Chicago and Los Angeles to be on high alert. Overhaul said in a recent report that intelligence indicates an active criminal crew targeting loads near O'Hare International Airport in Chicago. The company also anticipates an increase in targeted cargo theft operations in Los Angeles over the next 2 months. Overhaul said the crews working in Chicago and L.A. are known to cut through locks and trailer bars if necessary to gain access to the cargo. Danny Ramone, head of intelligence and response for Overhaul, told Landline that the situation nationwide is going to get worse before it gets better. Despite a new incoming congressional class of lawmakers in January, the current class continues to consider outstanding bills. On Tuesday, Congressman French Hill of Arkansas signed on as the 23rd co-sponsor of a bipartisan bill that would give FMCSA the tools it needs to combat fraud in the transportation industry. H.R. 8505, the Household Goods Shipping Consumer Protection Act, seeks to restore and codify the agency's authority to issue civil penalties against bad actors. The legislation would also require brokers, freight forwarders, and carriers to provide a valid business address to FMCSA before acquiring operating authority. In a statement of support, OIDA President Todd Spencer wrote that freight fraud committed by criminals and scam artists is devastating many small business truckers who are simply trying to make a living in a tough freight market. Spencer said the bill would give FMCSA better tools to fight back. To get your lawmaker on board, check out the fightingfortruckers.com website and click on key trucking legislation at the top of the page. The timeline for reopening a roughly 9-mile stretch of Interstate 40 damaged during Hurricane Helene is coming into focus. The North Carolina Department of Transportation expects I-40 through Pigeon River Gorge to reopen to two-way traffic by January 1st, 2025. Restrictions will be in place, though. It'll be one lane of traffic going each way with a speed limit of 40 miles an hour. Long-term repairs will continue, a process state officials say could take several years. Meanwhile, the Ohio Department of Transportation is working around the clock to reopen southbound Interstate 471 in Cincinnati. A fire that broke out November 1st is to blame. Officials say the fire damaged the Daniel Carter Beard Bridge, its support girders, the bridge deck, and support structures. Ohio Governor Mike DeWine declared a state of emergency that allows the state DOT to use federal funding for repairs. There's currently no timeline for reopening that stretch of I-471. In the meantime, regular traffic is being diverted southbound by way of I-71 and I-75 south. However, the Ohio DOT is encouraging heavy trucks and semis to use I-275 to the I-71-75 interchange. The Kentucky State Police will be participating in a 3-day Federal Motor Carrier Safety Administration event focused on road safety later this month. It's called Operation Safe Drive. Troopers in Kentucky and elsewhere will be on the lookout for unsafe behavior such as aggressive driving, speeding, tailgating, failing to wear a seatbelt, and driving under the influence. The 3-day enforcement campaign begins on November 18th. Judy Love, the co-founder of Love's Travel Stops, has passed away at the age of 87. Judy Love started the company with her husband, Tom Love, in 1964. In the decades to come, the company grew rapidly and now has more than 650 locations in 42 states. Judy Love's family said she was the heart and soul of their family and will be remembered for her philanthropy, tenacity, and strength. Her husband, Tom Love, passed away in March of last year. She is survived by her children, 9 grandchildren, and 6 great-grandchildren. And finally, the Owner-Operator Independent Drivers Association begins its annual week-long campaign aimed at helping veterans and active-duty military personnel on Monday. Now in its 18th year, Truckers for Troops sends care packages to service personnel stationed in combat zones and donates to the Veterans Community Project, which helps veterans in need of housing and other assistance. Since it began in 2007, OOID members have donated roughly $811,000 to veterans and veteran organizations. There are several ways to take part. New and renewed OOIDA memberships will be offered at a discounted price of $35 for a year. 10% of that total will go to Truckers for Troops, and OOIDA will match those funds dollar for dollar. Individual tax-deductible contributions are also welcomed. Full coverage of the campaign next week right here on Landline Now. And that's Landline Now News for today. I'm Scott Thompson.
Thanks, Scott. Congratulations to Stephen T. Lyons of Merrimack, New Hampshire. He's received the OOIDA Safe Driving Award for 44 years of safe, accident-free driving. That's the equivalent of a car driver going 330 years without causing a single accident. The OOIDA Safe Driving Award program is sponsored by Shell Rotella. Starting Friday, Marty Ellis and OOIDA's tour truck, The Spirit of the American Trucker, will be at the Sheets in Springfield, Ohio. That's located at Exit 59 on Interstate 70. Stop in, say hi to Marty, and join OOIDA for a $10 discount. Next, I'll discuss the potential effect of the election on truckers with OOIDA's Jay Grimes. Ashley Blackford discusses a partnership to fight human trafficking with Chris Oliver and Laura Cyrus. And Scott Thompson covers state ballot issues with our state legislative expert, Keith Goebel. We'll be right back. I'm Mark Reddick, and this is Landline Now.
Thanks for listening. Be sure to like and subscribe. If you want more content, go to landline.media to get updated news, information, and archived editions of our show. Once again, that's landline.media.
Running on ultra-low sulfur diesel? Stay protected this winter with Howe's Diesel Treat and Diesel Lifeline. Steer clear of gel and ice with North America's #1 trusted brand. Find Howe's products nationwide at select retailers, auto parts stores, truck stops, and on Amazon.com.
When it's time to overhaul your truck engine, help protect it by insisting on a genuine Vibertech TVD crankshaft damper. Heavy duty, absolute premium quality, and they're made right here in the USA. Find a dealer at vibertechtvd.com.
Truckdown.com. Whenever you have a breakdown, you need Truckdown.com. 24/7 access to 40,000 verified heavy-duty repair vendors nationwide. Owner-operators need roadside speed. Truckdown.com.
It's tested and proven. Burn 2.1% less fuel when you balance all wheel ends with Centromatic. Call 800-523-8473 to get the OOIDA discount.
You may have heard we had an election this week, and while you're likely familiar with the big results, what you may not know is the potential impact of those results on the trucking industry. Welcome back to Landline Now. This is Regulatory Roundup, and I'm Mark Reddig. I'm joined as always by OOIDA Director of Federal Affairs, Jay Grimes. Jay, thanks for joining me.
Good to be with you.
I think obviously by now we all know that former President Trump is now President-elect Trump. But what about Congress? At this point, do we know who has control of the House and Senate for the next year?
We certainly know that Republicans will control the Senate, at least with a 52-seat edge, possibly gaining a couple more seats that are still too close to call. It's going to be at least a few days before we have an official side on the majority control of the House of Representatives. Whoever comes out, it's going to be a very slim majority on the House side. So still waiting to see things there. But I think it was a resounding victory on the Republican side, and it's going to set up a Trump administration that will begin in January of 2025. Certainly have a little history to look back on when it comes to trucking policies from his first term. But, given the kind of switch in the Senate control and a very tight House, I think does have a little more, leverage to work from as he takes office this time around.
So let's take a look at some of the big issues that we expect will come up at some point, some of which are issues now. And I would think first and foremost, at least certainly the one that seems to spark the most emotion in the trucking community, is speed limiters, which FMCSA has been considering as a requirement for some time. As you mentioned, President Trump's been in office before, so we have some idea on his likely stance. So what can we tell people at this point?
Based on the lack of action to push forward with a speed limiter mandate from the Trump's first administration, I don't think it is going to be a high priority for them to advance the current supplementary notice of proposed rulemaking that came up in 2022. But we'll kind of see what happens. You never know for sure when it comes to how these things are going to develop here, but just speculating there. But when you look and see at the Drive Act legislation and the Republican support of that bill, which would prohibit DOT and FMCSA from advancing that speed limiter mandate, it does seem like the momentum for that might be stalled, which could be, I think, is a welcome sign for us at OOIDA. But that's again trying to read the tea leaves here. I know the debate on that will continue, no matter what. But looking back, we had a first notice of proposed rulemaking sort of after a decades-long petition process, and there was an actual proposal that came out from FMCSA and NHTSA back in 2016. But under the Trump administration from 2017 to 2021, that rulemaking was, for the most part, pushed to the long-term action agenda no movement was ever taken to advance or reopen that speed limiter proposal. So it could be a positive on the speed limiter front under, I guess, Trump 47 this time around.
Okay. Another big issue here is truck parking. And in fact, the incoming vice president has actually been a co-sponsor of a measure addressing that difficulty. Talk a little bit about the bill and what that bill would do and what J.D. Vance has done regarding it.
Yeah, Vice President-elect J.D. Vance has been a co-sponsor of the Truck Parking Safety Improvement Act, which would direct more than $750 million in DOT spending towards expanding truck parking capacity. That bill has moved at different levels throughout the past couple of Congresses. It's been passed by the House Transportation Committee, has not made it quite as far over on the Senate side, but truck parking, and the push for truck parking continues to be a bipartisan and bicameral issue. Even though we haven't got the legislation across the finish line on the congressional side, we've continued to see co-sponsors be added. The talk surrounding the bill, which is supported, I think, by pretty much every trucking industry group there is, I think has helped get DOT to award truck parking grants. And they've, in the past, under the Biden-Harris administration, I think there was hundreds of millions of truck parking grants that were doled out here in the past couple of years. Truck parking has really been proven a bipartisan issue. I'm hopeful that will again continue, and that we'll not only see more DOT grants come out under the new administration, but I think we're going to keep pushing for that Truck Parking Safety Improvement Act to finally get enacted on the congressional side as well.
Let's go to another big issue that I think we can expect to see the future Trump administration act on, and that's the ever-escalating emission standards from the EPA, the Environmental Protection Agency. And OOIDA has been very vocal on this issue. What is the association asking for in that regard?
Yeah, so we have, opposed the EPA's rulemaking Phase 3 greenhouse gas emissions for heavy-duty vehicles that the final rule, which was published earlier this year, would require that all new vehicles by 2032, all new trucks, sleeper cab trucks, have a 25% emissions reduction, really pushing truck manufacturers to transition into electric vehicle production in a timeline that, even the manufacturers say is a little too quick. Certainly, we would echo that sentiment considering the lack of, charging infrastructure, the lack of reliability for batteries, the uncertainty of mileage range, how long it will take you to recharge, the availability of where you can recharge. There's still a whole lot of, I think, infrastructure as well as cost questions that need to be worked out before some of these manufacturing levels should be mandated by EPA. And, we pushed back on that final rule, have supported Congressional Review Act legislation that would overturn the rule. And I think electric vehicles is one of the major issues that the Trump administration has been vocal on in the campaign, and I think is something that we anticipate the new administration really taking a close look at and having a much different perspective on some of these timelines and transitions to electric vehicles.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but I think it's reasonable to assume at this point that we might see an overall reduction in virtually all air pollution regulations, not just the ones regarding emissions from vehicles. But are we likely to see that type of thing?
Yeah, I think we're certainly going to see much more pushback on kind of this overly aggressive EPA that we've seen under the Biden-Harris administration. Again, the history is there going back to Trump's previous administration, and this was a big campaign issue, I think, as well. So I think that is definitely going to be a priority under Trump's second term.
Are there any other issues that we're watching with the new incoming administration, especially trucking issues?
Well, when you've got the new administration coming in, combined with the fact that the next Congress, the new Congress that's going to be convening, is going to have a highway bill to deal with. The current highway bill expires November of 2026. So the process to get that bill reauthorized is going to begin, and that's really going to cover a whole host of trucking policy issues. So driver training, minimum insurance, and I can, tick down all the lists that's going to be covered. But of course, a lot of that, we're still going to be watching to see who's going to be DOT secretary, what the new leadership at FMCSA is going to look like. So there's going to be a lot of activity, I think, especially over the next 2 years with Republican control of the Senate for sure, and possibly the House as well.
Now, while all this is going on, we still have about 2 months left in the Biden administration before Inauguration Day, and some administrations in the past have put considerable effort into some last-minute midnight regulations before leaving office. Are we aware of any specific issues where the Biden administration is likely to act before they're out of office?
We're hopeful that we'll see some action on broker transparency. That's obviously one we're watching. We were expecting a notice of proposed rulemaking to come out in October. We know the agency is in the process of working on that, and we'll see if they're able to publish that before the transition. Another one that we're watching for is automatic emergency braking. That final rule is currently projected to be out in January, so we'll see if that projection is met. Certainly, we have had major concerns on that AEB proposal that we don't think sufficiently addressed the notion of false activations on AEB systems, did not properly consult with commercial drivers who have had AEB experience. So, and that rule was supposed to come out earlier this year and has already been delayed once. So potentially that could be delayed again as well.
A couple of minutes left. You mentioned the broker transparency issue, and another issue for truckers that's been in process for some time also involves brokers. In this case, a rule dealing with broker financial responsibility. And we've got a situation that's currently in place, and FMCSA has proposed a final rule that would change the situation. What are the basics of that?
Yeah, so the final rule for broker and freight forwarder financial responsibility was published about a year ago in December of 2023. And this really implemented a number of provisions that were enacted by Congress back in MAP 21 in 2012 that frankly have never really been enforced and have not really been complied with when it comes to unscrupulous brokers. Really the main provision being the suspension of broker authority if their broker bond falls below $75,000. And this is an instance we see happening too often to carriers where these financial companies and these brokers will let claims build up against that $75,000 bond. The broker, we know, doesn't have the financial liquidity to cover that. A lot of times these cases go to court and there's settlements for pennies on the dollar going back to carriers. And we're hopeful this final rule could help address that, and I think the final rule had included a number of other important provisions that could provide some financial oversight for brokers and freight forwarders. Originally, these provisions were set to take effect in January of 2025, but we have heard within the past week that FMCSA is going to propose to delay the compliance date of a few of those key provisions until January of 2026 now. A lot of it has to do with delays in the registration system. That's really going to be the mechanism to keep track of these broker financial statuses and how their bond is doing.
Okay. Well, Jay, we're out of time, but it's a fascinating topic, and I hope we talk about it more. In the meanwhile, thank you very much.
Okay, thank you.
I've been talking with Jay Grimes of OOIDA. Landline Now will be back in just a moment.
Are you tired of the IRS following you around like a dark cloud? Call 888-557-4020 and get your life back.
At Truck Stop, we've built a better load board for carriers like you. Sign up today and access over 600,000 loads on the most trusted online load board. Learn why the best in the business rely on Truck Stop to make more money and start driving your profit today.
Landline Now, welcome back. In an effort to make it easier to report suspicious activity involving sex trafficking, Trucker Path has partnered with Truckers Against Trafficking to add a feature to its app to help drivers contact law enforcement. To speak about this, Chris Oliver joins me. He is the Chief Marketing Officer for Trucker Path. Chris, where did the idea come from for this addition to the app?
That's a heck of a good question. It kind of just came up organically. Actually, I think it really just through conversations. We about a little over a year ago, announced a relationship with the Women in Motion Council at ATA, and I think that was kind of the beginning of this next conversation we've had with TAT.
And talk to me a little bit about that partnership and kind of how it's grown over the years.
With TAT?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, like I said, really, it's all about us really just extending the reach. They've got a really nice app in place that if somebody suspects they see human trafficking, they're able to open the TAT app, touch on a report feature, which based upon wherever they are when they do that, it shows the hotline, the phone numbers, the people that you need to call to report suspected trafficking. So that's a pretty nice tool, really good tool if somebody really suspects something and needs to report it. But they have a little bit less reach than we do with our app. We've got a little over 1 million active users, so about a third of the drivers in the long haul drivers industry use Trucker Path regularly. So they've got a great message and the beginning of reach. We've got tremendous reach, so we decided to get together and take their message and pass it on to the big reach that we have as a whole, and really just kind of educate the industry and hopefully reduce trafficking as a whole.
And talk to me a little bit about what the Trucker Path app has right now.
I think the easiest way to think about it is if you take Yelp and Waze and put them together specifically for truckers. On the Yelp side, lots of ratings and reviews from over 500,000 points of interest, most of which were cultivated through suggestions from the truckers themselves. And then probably the most important, the most used feature or most relied upon feature that get drivers to start using Trucker Path is our parking availability. We've identified about 20,000 places where trucks can park legally and safely throughout the country, and they're all geofenced. So whenever one of our users breaks that geofence, we ask them a really easy question. Is the lot full? Are there some spaces available? Are there a lot of spaces available? Which is kind of a vanilla question unless you have 1 million people answering it. Then you start to get really good information. So what happens very, very commonly is one driver will say, geez, I had a hard time finding parking. Driver B says, you should check out Trucker Path. They look, they'll see on the map that, pick a truck stop, the Loves in Tolleson, Arizona. 3 minutes ago, a fellow driver said there were a lot of spots available. So that driver goes there, they show up, and when there's a lot of spots available, they're hooked. They're in the game. They understand that we're really a community facilitating these types of conversations. So then it just grows from there. We do similar things around way stations, shipping docks. Is there a gate? Is it guarded? Do you need an appointment? Are there restrooms? Can you park there? Etc. So it all comes together. I often joke, and I do interviews like this, that Trucker Path should have been called Hooking a Brother Up, because that's kind of what we do, is just facilitate the conversation amongst the drivers who tend to help each other out quite a bit as it is.
Laura Cyrus joins me now. She is the Senior Director of Industry Training and Outreach for Truckers Against Trafficking, or TAT. Laura, why is it so important that anyone in the transportation industry be educated about trafficking, especially truck drivers?
Truckers are the eyes and ears of our nation's highways. I mean, they are everywhere, right? At any given time, there are more truck drivers over the road than there are law enforcement officers. And so we recognize that truck drivers are in places, unfortunately, where they may come into contact with victims, because the traffickers, those victimizing these human trafficking victims, recognize that there's an unfortunate market for what they're selling, right? So truck drivers may find themselves intersecting with victims at rest areas, truck stops, hotels, motels, city streets, places of business, local communities for those local drivers, just truly anywhere. And if they are if they're trained to recognize those red flags, and to just take that second look, immediately report what they're seeing, we're finding that this is leading to the discovery and disruption of human trafficking networks and ultimately changing and saving lives. One thing that I would love to add is, I work with a number of drivers in many capacities and have over my time at TAT. And it's just interesting to hear them talk about as they come into their own ownership of this work and just really sort of get excited about the cause. They've told me, we're trained to read all of the signs, right? As we're going down the highways, mile markers, exits, all these things. Why wouldn't we be trained to recognize the nuances of this crime and be in a position to help, make a phone call, which is all we're asking folks to do.
Now, Trucker Path will soon add the TAT report feature on its app. Tell me how that all came about.
Yeah, so that actually was a connection from a mutual partner. So American Trucking Associations and their WIM, Women in Motion initiative, they came to us and said, hey, we'd love to bring TAT into a conversation with Trucker Path. We've enjoyed our partnership, and we think that there might be some synergy here, and just having a discussion to see what might come about as a relationship. And so we took a call earlier this summer and just ideated on a number of different things, and ultimately it was Trucker Path's idea to say, hey, could we consider including this report feature of the TAT app into our own platform? And it's something new for us, but it was exciting to think about. I think Trucker Path says that they have over 1 million users a month, which is astronomical and such a great reach. And so it just made sense to try to see what we could do and get this information out to the people using their app.
And can you explain to me what the report feature does?
Yes. So the report feature includes a geolocated set of phone numbers, essentially. So no matter where you are in the country, if you pull up the TAT app, which some of this is being moved over to Trucker Path, you are able to see the best reporting numbers given your specific location. So there are not localized human trafficking hotline numbers in every state. Unfortunately, it's a growing trend and option, but TAT has identified a series of numbers, whether they are state, local, regionalized hotlines, as well as the National Human Trafficking Hotline and 911 that will come up depending on where that user is located, and you are then able to click to report or make a phone call to those hotlines or 911.
And what are some of the signs that someone might see at a truck stop that could be suspicious?
Yeah, so if you see, really the two most obvious signs that we try to train on are anytime you see a minor that you believe is engaged in commercial sex, or anytime you believe you're witnessing someone under the control of a pimp, regardless of the age or gender, not only of that victim, but also that suspected trafficker. If you see someone going from truck to truck, knocking on cab doors, if you see someone that is not dressed appropriately for the weather or time of day, if you see someone that looks like they're being controlled by someone else, if you see a vehicle pull into could be a rest area, could be a truck stop, could be a city street. If you see a vehicle pull in and multiple women and girls, although this crime affects boys and men as well, but you see multiple people getting out of a vehicle and it seems like they're then going to solicit. Those are major red flags that this could be a human trafficking situation. Does it mean that it always is? No. But at that point, what we're asking is for those folks, those drivers or any of us, just to take that second look, to slow down and to say, okay, the hairs on the back of my neck might be standing up, right? I'm witnessing something that doesn't seem quite right. Let me just take another look and see if there are any other red flags that may indicate that this is human trafficking and that I should make that phone call right away.
And I know I've heard of a couple stories. Do you have any that you can just kind of briefly go over of times that a truck driver did call and it did end well?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think of some of our Harriet Tubman Award winners, which if you want to read those stories, check out our website. We have a number of TAT in action cases that you can review and sort of see this work in action. But I think of Joe Aguayo. He was a driver that found himself in a mountainous location on his route. He actually didn't have cell phone service. He knew he wouldn't have cell phone service for several hours, but this was a route that he would typically take. He came around a curve and saw a woman standing on the side of the highway, looking up, staring up into the mountains, wrapped only in a beach towel. Her head was shaved. And at the time, Joe was unable to stop in that moment, but he kept going because he knew that there was a police call box that was just a few minutes down the road. He got up to that call box. He picked up the phone. He said, "Hey, I just saw something very suspicious, something strange. Please send somebody out to help this woman." And the person on the other end of the phone said, "Absolutely, we'll check it out." Joe continued on his way, never really knew what happened until a few months later when Joe unfortunately had a weather-related accident. The trooper that was helping him at the time, they started to have a conversation. Joe said, "Hey, whatever happened to that woman, from this same area a couple months ago? I made a call about somebody at the side of the highway." And the trooper said, "That was you that made the call?" And the trooper ended up being the one that responded to that scene, recovered that woman, who ended up being a 27-year-old Indigenous woman from about 4 hours away. She had been dumped there by her traffickers. She had been drugged. She was malnourished. She was incredibly hurt. In fact, the nature of her wounds, the trooper said, took his breath away. But he was able to get her to a local hospital where she was, set up with a caseworker. And for confidentiality reasons, we don't know what happened after that. But the point is, in that moment, Joe's attention to detail and just willingness to do something truly saved that woman's life. So we have all kinds of stories like that of drivers, again, just being in the right place at the right time and being willing to make a phone call. That's one thing I want to stress. We're not asking drivers to be Batman or Superman, although I totally think you all are amazing. But just make a call from the safety and anonymity of your cab or wherever you end up finding yourself. We don't need you to intervene. We don't need you to try to recover these victims yourself. It's not only not safe for you, it's not safe for those victims. But the power of a phone call is truly remarkable. And we know, thanks to Truckers Calls, thousands of victims have been identified and recovered. And we know that there are so many more opportunities for the men and women of the trucking industry to be a part of this.
We've spoken about the feature that will soon be on the Trucker Path app, but TAT also has an app, right?
Yeah, so we recently relaunched our app this year in 2024, and it has, in addition to that amazing reporting feature, there are, as I've mentioned, specific red flags to industries. So when you pull up the app for the first time, you can say, yeah, I want to see content that's specific to bus drivers or energy workers or local drivers. There's a number of different ways that the app can then kind of customize the content and the red flags specific to your niche industry. There are links to service provider information on the app. There are ways to share the TAT message with others if that's a cool little template email that we have populated if you want to share it with your company. If you'd like to take TAT's bus-specific training to your local school district and make sure that the bus drivers in your school district are trained, there's an opportunity to do that. We also have notifications that are coming through with training tip reminders or other news from TAT that will be able to connect directly with those users. So it's an ever evolving and growing tool, but we're hopeful that anybody that is familiar with TAT will consider downloading it and use it both as an educational tool as well as a reporting feature as well. You can access our brand new training portal, take all of our free training courses that are available there. So again, it's really exciting with the rebrand that we had this year. We knew we needed to update that app, and we're so grateful for our partners that continue to push that out for us.
That was Laura Cyrus with Truckers Against Trafficking. For more information on the organization, you can visit tatnonprofit.org. There isn't a hard date yet when the TAT feature will be available on the Trucker Path app, but it's expected in the next few weeks. For Landline Now, I'm Ashley Blackford. Stay tuned for more after this.
Capital Reman, the leader in remanufactured diesel engines and components, has partnered with OOIDA to offer exclusive member benefits. Visit capitalreman.com today to support America's transportation industry and take advantage of your benefits.
Penske owns and operates some of the best-maintained vehicles on the planet. Our used trucks come with a 5-year maintenance report and pre-sale inspection. So if you're in the market for a top-quality pre-owned truck, look no further. Search our inventory today at PenskeUsedTrucks.com.
Since you started, what you've loved about trucking is the freedom. Heading out on your favorite route, a good driving song, and thinking about truck insurance. Well, maybe not that last one. That's why we're here. At OOIDA, we have a full range of truck insurance products, expert advice, and great customer service, helping you get the right coverage for your operation. Go to OOIDA.com because your job is to drive. Our job is to help with everything else.
Welcome back to Landline Now. Election day is behind us, and aside from the big races that get all the headlines, a handful of transportation-related questions were on the ballot on Tuesday. Joining us to break down what passed and what didn't is Keith Goebel, our in-house state legislative and election day expert. Keith, always good to see you.
Scott, good to see you. You know, for me, the post-election is kind of it's a bit of a smack in the face because after the elections are over,
you got nothing to do.
No, I mean it's the holiday season.
Yeah,
you've got to deal with that.
Well,
there is no downtime.
Before we have to deal with Thanksgiving and Christmas and all the other holidays, let's deal with what we found out from Tuesday. And before we get into the individual results, we're going to talk about a few states and counties here that are of interest. But did you see a pattern when it came to the results for, again, transportation questions on Tuesday?
Yeah, well, for the most part, the pattern was that there were actually results available within maybe about the first 12 hours, which I know isn't always the case, so sure. Depending on the issue or depending on who's on the ballot. But yeah, fortunately, transportation questions, they're very good about getting results. And for the most part, as is the case historically, transportation questions pass. But, you know, hey, whenever questions don't, transportation-related funding questions aren't approved, those are probably even more notable. There are a couple of states that have, maybe 3 states, California, South Carolina, Georgia. Typically, those 3 states have a significant number of transportation-related questions, at least at the county-wide level. There are states that have like citywide transportation. I think of Michigan having with their millages and stuff like that. It's kind of a consistent issue that they address there. But countywide at a minimum, those 3 states typically have quite a few questions on ballots, and in this year specifically, South Carolina and Georgia, a bit of a mixed bag. Not full blown. Yes, they're approving transportation-related tax questions. So, but yeah, generally, you would expect to see transportation questions trying to address funding needs be approved by voters.
Yeah, and I was curious. We talked about this before, but I was curious to see whether that trend would continue, transportation-related questions passing because of the inflationary concerns and everything else out there. And for the most part, it looks like they did. Let's run through the list here, starting with Proposition 479 in Maricopa County, Arizona. It passed. What does that mean for residents?
Yeah, of course, Maricopa County and the folks who travel through Arizona, a pretty good chance might be traveling through Maricopa County. They've had a transportation sales tax there for some time. There was a question on the ballot, Proposition 479, to extend it for 20 years with this half-cent sales tax, which anybody who's coming into the county there would be responsible for. It's expected to raise in the neighborhood of $15 billion over the course of the next 20 years. And another one of the reasons why transportation tax questions, not only here in Maricopa County, but in other areas around the country, is if you're going to increase taxes, if it's going for specific, and I say specific purposes, it's going for transportation. It's not just going into, say, a general fund, which who knows if you've got transportation needs in a county, but the money's going to be going for general purposes. It's just a small portion of that, right? That potentially could be going for transportation. But anyway, whenever you have it being devoted for the this intended purpose, it makes it a little bit easier for voters to accept that. Again, it's a half cent, something that they've already been collecting there. So just a continuation of that, and voters said, absolutely, let's do it.
And just to be clear, you've got a piece on landline.media that covers pretty much all these races that we're going to be talking about, plus some others. So we're not going to get to all of them, but if you want to check out, an area of interest for you, landline.media is a place to do that. You mentioned a few states. I want to kind of run through those and maybe get some highlights from you regarding the ballot questions there. California, you mentioned. There were a lot, I think, that were on the ballot throughout the state. What kind of stands out to you there?
Yeah, generally, California's got quite a few counties that will have transportation questions on a year-to-year basis. This year, not so much. At least not what I found. But those counties that did have transportation funding questions, these are transportation taxes. Maybe 1%, 0.5% is what these counties were pursuing. The counties that I was following, Humboldt County, Madera County, San Diego County, all approving their transportation taxes. Obviously, San Diego County being the most notable here, voting to raise the sales tax rate that is collected there in the county by 1/2 cent. And the focus is obviously it's a transportation question. The focus is being on transit, getting people off the roads, which, I see that point. Definitely does help to maybe keep some folks off the road. Hopefully that will improve congestion issues there in San Diego County. But there is no sunset clause to this question in San Diego County. So this is, unless voters decide in the future to get rid of it, this will continually have that 1/2 cent transportation tax.
Georgia, South Carolina, 2 other states that you mentioned there. We don't have to kind of get into too much detail because we're kind of getting short on time here, but anything of note there that kind of stood out to you?
Maybe the thing of note is that it was a mixed bag. I mean, not all of the voters across the state, those counties that were voting on it's 1% tax for transportation, which specifically is roads, bridges, and public transit. Not everyone was on board with it. Counties that were voting to extend a tax that was already being collected, those pretty much were approved in both states, South Carolina and Georgia. Counties that were pursuing implementing their tax, this transportation tax, that was largely in those states. Voters rejected those. So if you have one already in place, folks are okay with maintaining it. If you didn't have one in place, folks weren't interested in adding that. So that was a bit interesting to see those results.
And again, landline.media, we've got, or Keith has a full list there of all these ballot initiatives. I did want to kind of take a step back and look at overall governor's races. Obviously, there were a number of them throughout the nation on Tuesday. Any trends there that kind of stood out to you and what they might mean for the future of, again, transportation-related questions?
As far as trends go, you might be able to say the status quo. You have 11 states elected governors, and not all of the races were with incumbents on the ballots. I mean, there were very few incumbents on ballots, but party control in those states that were selecting governors stayed the same. So a lot of continuation probably of what we've seen over the past few years in those affected states. This year, it's interesting. I mean, this is a presidential election year. There are so many things on ballots and folks that filled out ballots. I know us here in Missouri, a lengthy list of offices and issues that were on ballots. Presidential election years, as far as governor's races go around the country, it's like the second. It's a far cry from midterm elections. Whenever you've got 36 governors that are on ballots this year, presidential election year, that's in the cycle. There's just 11 states that are voting for governors. So not as much turnover as you might see in a midterm election, but this year, for the most part, pretty much standing pat with the parties that are in control of those states that voted on governors.
And then, Keith, Thanksgiving, Christmas, you're looking forward to that now.
Absolutely.
After that, 2025, 26, obviously there will be more issues like this on the ballot. We know you'll keep your eye on them and you'll keep us updated, and we appreciate it as always.
Yeah, well, thanks for having me.
That was Keith Goebel of Landline Magazine, and this has been Landline Now. We're out of time today, but back tomorrow with another show. Thanks for listening. Until next time, take care and drive safe.
Thanks for listening. Be sure to like and subscribe. If you want more content, go to landline.media to get updated news, information, and archived editions of our show. Once again, that's landline.media.
I'm a dad,
a son,
a husband,
wife,
I'm a writer,
photographer.
I farm.
I'm a veteran.
I love old cars, fishing,
my kids,
Chrome, and I am
a professional truck driver.
And together we are OOIDA.
OOIDA was founded by truckers to stand up and speak on behalf of truckers. We've done that by combining the individual voices of our members into a single, powerful voice. Protecting your interests, defending your rights.
Join us! Make your voice heard. Join OOIDA, the Owner-Operator Independent Drivers Association. Call 1-800-444-5791 or visit OOIDA.com.